it over here. So you'll get bumped and someone will sit there. I'll just put it below your seat.
I'm struggling with the mask, so.
Keep them as much as you can with your face.
Yeah. It sounds so easy too.
It's not. Hello? Nope. Hello? Nope.
Nice to meet you.
Hello? It works. Hello, everyone. Please come on in. If you are a speaker, please sit up front so I can call you up easily. Mayor, I see you up front. Hello and welcome. I want to thank you all to the Without It, Nothing Moves call to action on zero emission infrastructure. This has been a big theme that I think we've all seen consistently through COP, which is that as we're all looking to make the zero emission transition, that without the infrastructure, nothing moves. So here we have a wonderful set of panelists today. My name is Sydney Vergis. I work for the California Air Resources Board, specifically on zero emission regulations. But most importantly for today, I'll be your master of ceremonies. I think the interest in infrastructure is really evident by the number of folks we have participating on our panels today. So I'll also be keeping a very strict time schedule. So first up, I would like to introduce Minister Van Weidenberg, who's the Minister for the Environment for the Netherlands, to give some opening remarks, which will be followed by Chair Randolph from the California Air Resources Board. Minister?
Yes, very nice to be here. Welcome to you all. From a Dutch perspective, I also welcome the mayor of one of our major cities of Utrecht. And my predecessor, one of my predecessors, so happy that you're here. And happy to see so many of you here on this important issue. Without it, nothing moves is the theme. And I'm always a bit reminded, for everybody who watches maybe sometimes American sitcoms, of the quote of Married with Children with Al Bundy for the connoisseurs of high-quality TV. And there's the Sinatra song, you can't have one without another. And I think that symbolizes where we are, I think, with electric vehicles. We are making big steps with innovation. I was excited this morning to hear, for example, from Scania about trucks they can operate in the north of Norway to run in the logging industry. And they work with more than 20 degrees below Celsius. And I think that's, if you would have told me that 10 years ago, I would not have believed that's feasible. And I think that would open a whole new range of electric heavy transport, but the same goes for personal vehicles. So I think we are moving along. And if I now look to the Netherlands, we are subsidizing cars. It's still required, but technology is going so fast. The industry is moving so quickly. And at the same time, we see that prices go down because of that. That I think that our main and next issue will be the charging infrastructure. Which in the Netherlands, and I told to Chair Randolph, the same in California, it is part private, that works well, but can it keep pace with the pickup of consumers? And I think it would be the end of any change if people buy an electric car and then find out that there's no place to charge. If we get logistic companies to move to electronic or zero-emission buses or heavy trucks, then there's no place to charge them. So I think the charging infrastructure, and especially also the electricity grid, just the plain quality of the grid and the capacity of the grid will be our new thing. And the Netherlands chaired the Transport Decarbonization Alliance because we can only do this together. Industry, countries, and we can learn from each other because we're all on the same journey. Some of us are maybe started 1 or 2 years earlier, but we all know that we have a long way ahead of us. And it was an honor for the Netherlands to share, and it's with great pleasure, Leanne, that we now hand over the chair of the TDA to you. There's no more fitting moment than doing this here at COP26. So happy to be here. I think we can learn from each other. I think we're making progress. There's big room for optimism, but there's always a long way to go. So if I could, Chair Randolph, maybe hand over symbolically the chair of the TDA to you. And I'm sure that with California, we have, I think there's no better share that we could wish. So I'm very happy that you're able to do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. It is a real honor to be taking over this this chairmanship, and I just really want to thank you for all the incredible amount of work that you put in to the TDA. Last year, you put us on the road to COP26 with the event you co-initiated, and here we are, and we're ready to go. And today, we will announce the call to action on zero-emission infrastructure. Infrastructure is so important in the work that we're doing, and I can't tell you how excited we are in California to be doing this work and to be partnering with companies and other jurisdictions to really move the infrastructure conversation forward. It is very complex. We have issues of the utility that we need, with the electricity we need, the grid, and we have challenges in terms of locating the infrastructure we need, financing the infrastructure we need, and all of that is what will create the actual movement in the vehicles, right? The vehicles, they need their fuel, and so the infrastructure piece is so important. In California, we are already feeling the effects of climate change, wildfires, severe drought, water shortages, bracing ourselves for sea level rise. Around the world, we are understanding that these impacts are here, these impacts are now, and we need to take urgent action to move to that zero-emission future that we are all trying to build. And so the technology is ready, industry is poised. They are rolling out the vehicles of the future. They are building vehicles that can go in can take logs in freezing, northern Europe, and we're working to ensure that there are vehicles that are moving freight and goods throughout California and then into the rest of the country. And so we are, in California, we have our regulatory structure, and we have set manufacturer requirements to transition to zero-emission vehicles. And we want to see that transition by 2040. We have set the manufacturers and the purchasers of fleets on course to accomplish zero emission by 2040. And so that future is right around the corner, and we're excited to work with TDA in sharing what we're doing in California and learning what others are doing around the world. So we are all ready to build the glide path and to get to that zero-emission future. And so the call to action on zero-emission infrastructure includes both private and public partners who know the importance of successfully navigating this transition. And our partners who are working on this call to action are too numerous to list, but we have over 30 who have already signed on to the call of action. And so we have a QR code, which is right there, because everything involves QR codes. And we really encourage you, if you haven't already, to download it. And I don't know that that's the proper term for a QR code, but whatever it is you do with a QR code, we encourage you to sign on to the call of action, because we are all in this together, and we're all working hard together, and we are going to get there, and we're all going to get there with a close, private, public, international partnership. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair and Minister. This is a pretty momentous occasion for the Transport Decarbonization Alliance. So if you two wouldn't mind standing up and shaking hands, we will take a picture. Thank you both so much. You may be excused. We're so lucky to have both of them having led the TDA. The minister has certainly been a leader and when it comes to the circular economy, and the chair runs one of the most important air quality agencies in California. So we will be in good hands. Also, since I work at CARB, I'm a little bit biased. Up next, we will have two framing presentations. The first one will be from Thomas DeLoyson, who's the director of the Mobility World Business Council for Sustainable Development, followed by Dale Hall, researcher from the International Council on Clean Transportation. Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Sydney, and good afternoon to everyone. Good morning and good evening to those who are probably connected online. I'm really pleased first to be here, and thank you very much for the opportunity to co-host this event with the Transport Decarbonization Alliance. As the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we are obviously deeply involved and engaged since the beginning of the Transport Decarbonization Alliance, and we want to continue to do so in the future under the new tenure. About the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we are a non-profit organization that gathers 200 of the most forward-thinking CEOs to advance the topic of sustainable development. We do so by addressing the key imperatives such as climate, nature, and equality, and we're also harnessing system-level transformation for the key sectors in the industry. And one of them is obviously mobility, for which we do want to focus on decarbonization. It has become obvious to all of us that we have passed the tipping point. With the pandemic, the rate at which we have seen the announcements from the industry in the availability of vehicles, electric vehicles, has been amazing. So now that this tipping point has passed, we are all confident somehow that this transformation is firmly engaged. Now, we are very concerned so far at the World Business Council by the pace at which this is going to go. We do need, and just to remind everyone, to achieve on the light-duty vehicles around 64% of electric vehicle sales by 2030, according to the International Energy Agency. This is a massive, massive step. We are all talking about this S-curve, this exponential growth. Now, how do you articulate a system-level transformation across all the sectors that are part of this new emerging electric ecosystem in order to achieve this target? Well, this is exactly where we are heading with the World Business Council. No later than this morning, we were having an event where 9 CEOs from across the value chain, from the OEMs to the utilities, including the planners, were engaged into a deep conversation around how do you actually make it happen. Well, you have to focus on the users, make sure that the fleets receive differentiated incentives and support, because they are the lever for adoption. They need to be able to buy and adopt electric vehicles in a way that is going to be providing a short return of investment. That means optimized operations. This optimized operation depends a lot on how do you create the charging points? Do you have the space for doing so? How do you invest in the charging points? What kind of impact should it have on the grid? These are all questions that are at the core of this transformation, which obviously the utilities are extremely interested in engaging in, because this is an opportunity for the energy sector to integrate with the mobility sector and scale up the take of renewable energy sources. That's the second big lever of this transformation. Thirdly, it's all about planning, and I was so happy to have the minister next to me, because I was told this morning that the Dutch and Netherlands actually is currently the most dense charging infrastructure network, thanks to deep collaboration between the national level, the local level, and the private sector. So if there's really one thing that we have to remember when it comes to enabling this transformation in a way that is going to meet the pace required with a 1.5-degree scenario, is that collaboration will be at the core of it. But not just collaboration for the sake of it. It's really a mindset change. We need to be ready for our business models, for our practices, and for our regulation to evolve. 50 years ago, we electrified rural areas. 50 years ago, we did allow for cars to start to operate in cities safely. We can do it. It's just a matter of embracing collaboration with the right mindset. To that point, we have released today the charging infrastructure value framework, because we are convinced that within all these transformations across the value chain, lie enormous opportunities, and I've just named them. The speed at which the fleets can take or uptake or adopt electric vehicles, the opportunities for the grid if the right technologies are taken to increase the scale of renewable energy sources, the need for planning, the opportunities for data sharing that will enable better services for better user centricity. All of those are condensed into a document to which more than 30 private sector leaders have contributed that outlines 9 key recommendations that serve as a framework. I will stop there just by inviting you all to come and engage with us on this conversation, because we think there is an opportunity for all of us to take a key action and benefit from this transformation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I should have mentioned that the WBCSD is a co-host of this event with the TDA, and we also owe a big thanks to Transport Scotland for making this happen. I'm afraid they've already left, but please tell Transport Scotland that I thanked them from the bottom of my heart. Dale?
Yeah, thank you, Sydney and TDA for inviting me here. My name is Dale Hall. I'm an EV researcher at the ICCT, or International Council on Clean Transportation. And for those of you who are familiar with us, we're numbers people. We do a lot of analysis. So I brought some numbers and some figures to this event. Thanks for obliging me. And I'm really excited to hear about some of the solutions for scaling up charging infrastructure. But first, I want to help set the stage just by talking about kind of the scale of the problem and why this is such a big challenge. And I think it's not really controversial to say that we need a lot more charging infrastructure. If you've been to any events on transport this week, I think every person has made that point. And we see in our research that the countries that are the farthest along in the electric vehicle transition tend to have the most charging infrastructure. In particular, the Netherlands and Norway, who have the highest EV shares in the world. Sweden as well has done a good job building out their charging network. But then you get to the question of, okay, well, how much charging do we need? And that's where it starts to get a little bit tricky. People often want to try to talk about ratios of electric vehicles per charger. But when we look at some of the leading electric vehicle markets in the world, like the Netherlands and California, who are just up here, we see very different pictures emerge. In the Netherlands, you have something like 3 electric vehicles per public charger. China, actually, in the major cities is somewhat similar. In California, it's very different, about 30 electric vehicles for every public charger. And even Oslo in Norway is actually closer to that number than to the Netherlands. And this is a problem because in order to build out the charging that we need, the private sector and the public sector need some level of certainty to plan their investments, to build all the components, to plan the grants and incentives. So we need a little bit more information here. So we've tried to do that at the ICCT. And for better or for worse, we've found that you need to go down to a local level here. You need to look at the local factors that influence what the best charging infrastructure solutions would be. And we've done this in a bunch of different ways. I'm not going to try and explain all of our methodology. You can visit our website and read our reports if you're interested in that. But we've found a couple of findings that I think are helpful for this conversation today. And so the main things that influence how much public charging you need are, one, of course, how many electric vehicles you have on the roads. And the more electric vehicles you have, the faster you're transitioning to electric, the more charging you need. But it's not actually just a linear relationship. We find that over time, it will the relationship will flatten out and it'll be more like a logarithmic curve. Because the charging network will grow more efficient over time as the fleet fully transitions. The other big thing is access to home charging, and that's pretty intuitive. The more people have home charging, the less public charging you're going to need. But that really helps to explain the difference between California, where a lot of people have single-family homes and can charge in their garage, and places like Amsterdam or Shanghai or even San Francisco, as a subset of California, where there's much less home charging available. And then finally, you have to look at the travel behavior. How much do people drive? And especially, are people using their cars to commute to work and park? Because that unlocks the opportunity for workplace charging, which can be a very affordable option if home charging is not available. So what does this tell us? We've crunched these numbers in a bunch of different markets. Again, all of these reports are available on our website. And we found that although these differences between regions persist, in general, you need something like 25% to 35% annual growth in the number of public chargers over the whole next decade if we want to meet the electric vehicle targets that these countries have set out. And that's across all different types of chargers, but particularly workplace chargers, DC fast chargers that are in cities to serve those without home charging, and also things like taxis and ride-hail drivers that are driving a lot of miles in cities. And so if you run these numbers forward, that ends up being something like 20 times as much public charging by 2030 as we had at the beginning of this year. So that's just, again, to get a sense of the scale of the challenge. And just to end this on a little bit of a more practical note, as we get to hear from the implementers, a couple lessons on what this means. So this 25 to 35% annual increase is actually what we've been seeing in a lot of markets. So we're on the right path. We think we can do this. But the thing with exponential growth is that if the percent remains the same, the actual numbers of chargers keep getting bigger every year. And that's what we'd expect as the number of electric vehicles on the road gets more, keeps accelerating. And like you saw on the previous slide, we need charging in all different types of settings. So there really is room for a lot of different solutions, and we need to be collaborative rather than competitive. There's room for the electric utilities to build a lot of charging. There's room for the government to support charging in the segments where the business case isn't clear. And there's room for lots of different private companies to create good jobs in this space and have a good business case. And then finally, I said we have a good methodology, but the truth is the market keeps evolving constantly. Technology is changing, government policy is changing, and so as governments do this planning and companies do this planning, it's important to keep updating the assumptions and keep tracking progress and releasing open data so that everyone can plan and have more certainty so that charging infrastructure can accelerate the transition rather than holding it back. And I think I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for our introductory panel? Thank you so much. While we exchange places, I'm going to invite the government panel to come up next. Business panel, I know I told you you were next, but electeds get right of way. So come on up. And while they come up, Mayor and Assistant Minister, I realize that the Transport Scotland guys were actually hiding in the back, so please give them a round of applause and thank them for making this space available. So thank you so much for joining us. Here we have Mayor Dijksma from Utrecht, Netherlands, and Jeremy Hewitt, who's the Assistant Deputy Minister for Climate Change Strategy from our friends up north in BC, Canada. Thank you both for being here. So we're just going to jump right in. The panel question that I'd like to ask you both is, what does the acceleration to zero-emission transportation mean to you or your communities? And what role do you see your organization playing in helping to accelerate the rollout of zero-emission infrastructure? Mayor, let's start with you.
Yes. Oh dear. Yes, it works. Well, good afternoon, first of all. Yes, this has a high impact on our city. Because we really, I would like to explain a little bit about Utrecht, because not everybody in the room probably knows the town. It's Judith. How many people have been to Utrecht here? Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Yeah, it is a great city. So I do not have to explain a lot, I suppose. We're a large city and we're green. And not only green by looking at it, because we have a lot of parks and trees and recently rebuilt an old ancient canal, which was a motorcycle highway through the city. But we also want to be green by being sustainable. And that means that we have a big plan on phasing out emissions in our city. and at the same time have a lot more attention for things which are not cars actually, like how to walk, how to bike. We're the first biker city in the world, and we would like to remain that. Sorry, Copenhagen. Sorry, Amsterdam also. So it is really important that we have our focus not only on cars. But if you do have cars, which obviously take a lot of space in your city, then they better be clean. So what you have been seeing is that we try to do a lot of things that we heard also in the presentation. We try to accelerate. So that means that you need to build an infrastructure of charging points, public charging points, which the Netherlands are famous for. And what we have seen in, I think, the last year is that we doubled the amount from 1,000 public points to approximately 2,000. And that's really a big step forward. So this 25% or 30% growth, it's 50 with us. So at the same time, we need to rethink what it happens, for instance, what it means for how to organize the cars themselves. Sharing cars, for instance, is that the future? How do we cope with problems that you obviously also will have when everybody would use an electric car? Then what people say about electricity is that you have this peak in the grid, usually in the Netherlands 6 o'clock in the evening, when all families are there at their dinner table and then charge their cars. So what we now see is that we try to also, with intelligent ways of fighting this peak in the grid, to use cars actually as batteries. So we recharge and reload, and we have built now in the city the biggest car park spot where this recharging also will take place. So this is new technology in which cars used as batteries, which not only ask for electricity, but at the right moment also give you back the electricity you need. And if you are able to sort of play with this, then you can fight your problems with the grid, and that is what we really need to accelerate. So I think that what the last speaker said, and that would be my conclusion, is that the whole infrastructure and the technology should not be the thing that we are waiting for, but the thing that will accelerate the use of it. And what we need then is affordable cars. So we need the industry for this, because even I cannot afford a Tesla. I'm sorry. Yeah, I could if I would spend all my money on a car, but that's for me not interesting. So if you want families, for instance, and a lot of other people to drive electric vehicles, make them affordable, make them also more like adapted to daily life for other parts of people than the happy few. And I mean, it's a great car. No offense, I'm not sure if I am annoying anyone who maybe represent Tesla. So no offense, but it really needs to be a whole full market, also with, for instance, second-hand cars. So that is important. So only when the government or the local government sends clear standards on what they want, zero emission by maybe 2030, 2040, and the industry will cooperate, then we will really see this happen, because otherwise there are many issues, and I'm convinced we can tackle them, but it needs some boldness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Jeremy?
Thanks. Thanks very much. Fantastic panel. I loved the sort of stage-setting presentations. It was kind of a wake-up call as well. I thought, holy crap, we need more chargers in BC. Sorry for the foul language. We've got a lot of advantages in British Columbia in terms of EV adoption, EV charging infrastructure. So for folks that don't know, we're on the Pacific coast of Canada. Vancouver is our largest city. So we've got an electricity grid that's virtually 100% clean. I think it's 98% clean, so that's good. We've got, I think, the second lowest electricity rates in North America. Good as well. We've got the highest carbon tax in North America. Another good incentive. towards moving to EVs. We've got a low carbon fuel standard as well, and frankly, a population that, relative to the rest of Canada anyway, is really keen on making the transition. And we have a suite of incentives, of course, as well. I think it's about $2,000 if you want to install a charger in your home, $8,000 to $10,000 for a business if they want to install charging stations in their buildings as well. But the big challenge for us is we've set in law now a 90% sales requirement for all new light-duty vehicles by 2030 and 100% by 2035. And I was trying to do some math based on the ICCT, I don't know if I'm getting the acronym right, presentation, but we'd be kind of towards the bottom of that list in terms of charging stations per capita. So we need to up our game there, and so really keen to work with this group. The other challenge, of course, is just the size of the province. So we've got a population that's a bit less than Scotland, but we're 12 times the size. So range anxiety is still a thing for people that live in the more rural and remote parts of the province, while Vancouver is incredibly dense and has amongst the highest housing prices in the world, I think in the top 5. So really sort of distinct situations and challenges in the province. And I think that speaks, for me anyway, to the value of us joining this great group. So thanks.
Thank you so much. So before I release you to go back to your lives, I have a quick lightning round of questions that we'll move through pretty quickly. These were not pre-prepared, and warning, they are tricky. So in California, we're a big fan of regulations. So in addition to incentives, this is a question for both of you. What is your favorite regulatory tool to push to zero emission? Manufacturer mandates, fleet purchase mandates, zero emission zones, or other?
I think you need them all. I mean, zero emission zones really help, obviously, because then you allow people only to enter when they are zero emission. But at the end of the day, if there are not enough cars to drive in, then you can have all the zones in the world, but then you still have your problem. So I think there is not one instrument. It's all about a intelligent set of push and pull. Because it's not only about forcing people into something else. You have to attract people to make the better choice. And for that, it should be more costly interesting for them. I think that we're now on a balancing point, because nowadays you see that the prices of electric vehicles are dropping. And at the same time, the price you should pay for getting the car ready again with the old fuel-driven cars is much higher. So at the end of the day, it probably will be more affordable to own an electric car than an old-fashioned car. But that tipping point should be reached soon in order to attract people. So it's not only about push matters, it has also something to do with pull. Otherwise, people are not feeling this as a choice that they made themselves. And you know all what happens with governments who push people into options they have hesitation about. That is something which usually is not going well. So I hope that people are choose for this by heart. And that is something that we need to look into. And so these instruments should also be aligned with a feeling of really try to convince people instead to force them.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. What do you think?
It's a lightning round, right?
It is.
So it's not a regulatory measure, but carbon tax would be number one. Really? Okay. Yay for taxes. We must be at COP. And I have to say it because we're doing it in BC, the manufacturer mandate second.
Those were all the right answers. Thank you both so much for your participation.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, while we're changing out, I'll invite the business panel to come up, and as you all are coming up, I'll also be introducing you, just given our time constraints, so come on up. So we have our business panel up next. We'll have Mr. Isbrand Ho, who's the Managing Director of BYD Europe, BV, and perhaps most importantly, has a daughter going to my alma mater, UC Davis. We have Joachim Rosenberg, Executive Vice President and Head of Volvo Energy, Volvo Group, and Andreas Follier, Head of Sustainability at Scania. I tried. So, gentlemen, same question to you. Andreas, we'll start with you. What does the acceleration to zero-emission transportation mean to you and your company? And what role do you see your organization playing in helping to accelerate the rollout of infrastructure?
Well, it's a revolution. Things that pretty much was unimaginable just a few years ago is now coming into play. I think faster than any one of us would have predicted. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, that was better. So I'm really happy that our little news from this morning has now gone viral, thanks to the minister and the chair, that we are now developing a timber truck able to carry 80 tons of timber in the harshest of conditions in northern Sweden. This is possible. We can do this. Obviously, there will be time to develop these solutions, but by 2025 or the years after that, we will be able to serve all our segments, all our heavy duty customers with electric trucks. And of course, that is a revolution. We have been building combustion engines for over 100 years, and now we're going to switch over in manners of decades. Already today at Scania, we have more engineers working in the software area than in mechanical engineering. Already today, we put our R&D budget on electromobility rather than in combustion. And this is while we're just selling a few of these electric vehicles this year. But we're hoping to reach around 10% of our total volumes by 2025, and then we're aspiring towards 50% by 2030. So it's going to go fast, probably faster than any one of us would believe. And it's a really exciting journey. I can say the technology is there. There's no major technological barriers that are left in order to electrify all segments of the heavy-duty sector. It's all about adoption now. It's all about the theme of today's panel, infrastructure. It's all about incentivize our customers. Remember that the fleet operators, the transporters, is a low-margin business. We cannot expect them to take the costs and the risks of this technology shift. Those are the ones who need our support now. And I think I stopped there, but I guess that's the topic of this conversation.
Wonderful, very inspiring. Thank you, Andreas. Mr. Ho, would you like to go next?
Sure, I'd love to. Hello. Hello. Okay, I think what happened is I was on a forum yesterday, and then one of our German competitors saying that the future is coming. And then one of the startup companies saying that the future is now. Well, I'd like to tell you that the future happened 10 years ago, okay? And it did, all right? Thank you very much, okay? I mean, if you just check out the buses in London right now, the double-decker buses, the single-decker buses, and also in the Netherlands, they're electric right now. So the willingness has to be there. I think the technology, and I absolutely agree with you that the technology is already there. But a lot of companies, because of ROI matters, we're still talking about diesel, Euro 6, Euro 7, and then we have to make that transition, the willingness transition. The technology is there. Infrastructure. Dale touched on earlier about the numbers of charging stations and whatnot. I think I can separate that into two parts. The commercial sector, it's already there. The commercial sectors are working very well. And you've talked about buses, for example, and this is something that we know very well. We have been doing that for the last 10, 12 years here in Europe as well. That the bus operator knows very well that the depots are very small, especially here in the UK. How do we smart charge these vehicles? Vehicles that need to be dispatched at 5 a.m. in the morning got to be charged first, So they need to be queued up in the front of the queue, where the vehicles that's going to be dispatched at 8:30 in the morning can be charged later. So the smart AI has to be there. It's not about only the charging points. It's also about the smart AI that's available. Depots, very important areas, can be revitalized. Solar panels, energy storage units. This is all happening right now. In fact, we have received bids right now that the bus operator want us to take on the whole project, not just the buses. The bus is only 1/3 of the total budget. The whole budget, including the refreshing of the whole depot. I think that infrastructure, it's already starting to take shape. And more so, energy companies are playing a very important role in that. They're understanding one of the resistance from user adopting the electric vehicle because of the capex. And now they're able to separate the capex and the opex and moving some of the capex to opex. And that, in a way, it's helping. And a lot of energy companies, trust me, a lot of energy companies, they used to call themselves oil companies. Now they call themselves energy companies, adopting to that very quickly. And also the traditional leasing companies. And one last word about leasing companies. 5 years ago, when I started talking to leasing companies, they said, we cannot give you a number on electric vehicle because you have no residual values. Now they have woken up. They realize that residual value is in the battery itself. After the 8-year, 10 years operation, you still have a live battery that could be used, redeployed for something else. So I think that formulation has been resolved. On the passenger side of things, I agree with Dale. We need to move on faster. Countries like the Netherlands, countries like Norway, it's moving advanced very quickly, but there are other countries to catch up. But it's all about the willingness. And I hope that everybody in this room, everybody attending COP26 will be working together and make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Joachim, what say you?
Thank you so much. Great to be on this distinguished panel. I must both agree and disagree then with Mr. Ho. Then I still think that the future lies ahead of us, and I'll try to explain why. I think on the bus side, we agree. And the reason we agree is, like Mr. Ho, on the Volvo Group side, we've also had, of course, buses out for 10 years doing the work around the depots, because it's a lot about the vehicle. On the vehicle side, of course, like everyone else, on the Volvo Group side, we're working more productive, more safe, more environmentally friendly, 100% fossil free. On the car side, as Dale pointed out, which is a consumer product, right? It's taking off and the infrastructure is there in the thousands, in the hundreds of thousands. I don't know if you know, but does anyone know how many high-performance chargers are available on European roads for trucks today? It's less than 10 across the entire continent of Europe. And that's why the future is ahead of us. And then the question becomes, how do we get to that? I think one of the main enablers is that partnership is the new leadership. We need to collaborate. And we need to be allowed, coming back to policymakers, we need to be allowed to collaborate. We need to move the brown platform that we are working on today to a green platform. That green platform has to be environmentally sound, it has to be economically viable, and it has to be socially inclusive to a degree which is much higher than today. How do we get to that in turn? Well, I think we need to be allowed to form the partnerships that, for instance, we took initiative from the Volvo Group side together with Daimler and Traton recently to create a joint venture, which is in the forming, of deploying high-performance chargers across Europe. That is one step. Other things governments can help out with or policymakers can help out with in order to boost infrastructure chargings on the commercial side. Green energy, access to the grid, making sure that works, speeding up policies and permits and making it happen, and allowing us from the commercial side to collaborate in a way across the value chain, which maybe has not been the case on the brown platform. Of course, I do want to be completely clear, that green platform should be competitive neutral, and we will compete on that platform. But if everyone needs to create their own platform, it's going to take too long. And for that reason, I think the future is ahead of us. And we need to move from individual company success to some sort of collective significance. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, all of you. Joaquim, very excited to hear about this partnership with Traton Group Daimler. Certainly would welcome that in California.
As you know very well, we have a test pilot going in California as well, together with CARB in the Lights project, right?
Well done.
So we're working on that.
Well done. That was a setup. Well done. All right. Well, now it's your turn for a lightning round. Mr. Ho, we'll start with you. Yes or no? There will be enough batteries and related materials that can be extracted and used in a responsible manner to see us to a 100% zero emission transition.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
We have done research over the years about the availability of material that's required. And one of the things I want to mention here, the requirement of lithium iron phosphate battery has jumped about 300% over the last 12 months alone. And I think that's a big switch from NMC battery to LFP battery, recognizing its cost advantage as well as the energy density advantages. And the safety, of course, that's a very important thing. So coming back to your question right now, we've done some research in the past. We do believe that the next 25 years, the materials, it's adequate for the continuous production and the growth of the electric vehicles. This is one of our concerns also. I was on another panel yesterday. The concern is more about copper, for example. Is copper being able to keep up? So we're going to have more challenges besides just battery materials. Based on our own analysis, 25 years is the number. Is that number going to continue to change? Of course it is. Of course it is. Is lithium iron phosphate going to be the holy grail of batteries? Probably not. Okay, what's going to be next? There's a lot of things on the horizon right now. And one thing that I agree with Joaquim here is the future is continuous. Okay, it's a continuous improvement process. Okay, but that future actually started 10 years ago, and then we're making continuous improvement to making things much better. LFP is a good battery right now. What happened 5 years later? Will that material be different from now? So I think material is a concern, but more to that, building that vehicle requires more than just the lithium products inside. So we should have questions on those as well.
Great, thank you. Yes?
Yeah. Lightning round, right?
Sure,
So there are things that I'm more concerned about than that. And I think the whole grail of batteries is recycling. And obviously, I mean, we're not there yet. These batteries are taking us by surprise. They are lasting so very long, but at the end of their lives, we're going to be able to mine the system. At Scania, we have chosen to have Northvolt as our primary battery cell supplier, which is 100% renewable electricity in the northern Sweden, and with an ambition to recycle and use only recycled minerals and metals. Yeah, so I think we'll do it.
That's great news. Joaquim, would you like to chime in on this one?
Lightning round, right? So I would say I'll focus on trucks, not buses and construction equipment. When I speak to customers of our truck brands, Mack Trucks, Renault Trucks, Volvo Trucks, they basically have three concerns in transitioning from the diesel truck to an electrified truck. It's price, it's range, and it's infrastructure. Range will fix. I mean, all of us will fix that. Price, we will jointly fix, including the price on carbon, which someone said before, which we completely agree with, by the way. Infrastructure, that is the bottleneck that I'm most concerned about. So I think, will the availability of batteries be the bottleneck? Like Andrea said, there are other things I'm more concerned about, would be my answer to that.
Well done. You all passed lightning round number 1. Are we ready for lightning round number 2?
Yes.
Andreas, we'll start with you this time. Other than free money, what is the one thing you want from government to support zero-emission infrastructure?
Well, it's been said already, and I can say it again. I mean, we need a different kind of grid capacity for our products. The heavy ones, the heavy-duty transport solutions, they require mega charging network, and we just need access to the grid. We need a fast build out to the highways if we're going to be able to really accelerate long haul zero-emission vehicles.
Great. Joachim?
I would say the money part, just for the...
Other than free money.
No, of course. For the money
Gotta play
part,
by
for
the
the
rules.
record, I was in your corner on this one, by the way. For the money part, we don't think that that should be a big part of it. We are in the business to business, and the use case for cars, as Dale put it, right? There I could see government stepping in on the infrastructure because the utilization on cars is so different. When it comes to commercial vehicles, that's a business tool. There is a commercial case, and as an industry, we should be able to stand on our own 2 feet, so to speak, right? So the money part I'll leave aside, right? For the other part, I would say, as I mentioned in the first answer I gave, I would say the access to the grid and green energy is the most important factor that I think governments can and should support with. Yesterday at dinner, this is a true story from yesterday at COP26, one of the largest retail grocery chains in Sweden told me that they could not have 120 LCV delivery vans in Stockholm, Sweden, because there was no access to the grid. So they had to buy diesel vans. And I think that's a shame.
Absolutely. Mr. Home?
I think right now, with the passenger vehicles, with the low voltage charging, I think we're on track. People are paying attention to that, government paying attention to that. But for MCV, HCV, that's a different matter. Okay, and Joaquin pointed out how many charging stations did you say, 10?
Less than 10.
Less than 10, okay. Is that the right way to do that, to charge these heavy-duty vehicles? Is battery swapping another option? I don't think a driver can drive continuously for 500 kilometers. How about making that coffee stop, the smoke stop, that we're able to swap the battery? We can hoist it out and replace it with a pack. I mean, that can be done. Same thing with long-distance coaches. There's nobody's addressing that right now. There are a lot of long-distance coaches running here in the UK, for example, and up and down the coast of California. Okay, why can't we do that? Okay, I think this is something that we should really consider. 2 weeks ago, I was in London talking to the Global Investment Summit, and many people are invested in the charging infrastructure. But when I start talking about battery swapping, they said, well, this is something in the past, isn't it? I said, yes, it is. But that was applicable to passenger vehicles. And that was a company called Better Dreams. Better Place. Better Place. Well, they're in Better Place right now. But I think it is applicable to long-distance vehicles because of the fact that drivers need to stop and rest and have coffee breaks. So I think we might want to go down that path, maybe with some government encouragement, with some government money there. Well, you said no money mentioned, but maybe government encouragement, we can move towards that path. And I know the energy companies, they're interested in doing that right now.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Well, one last question, and then I'll release you. And this is the trickiest of all. So the last question is, what country or region will lead the world in zero-emission infrastructure deployment? What country or region will lead the world in zero-emission infrastructure deployment?
For commercial vehicles. First of all, I think it's important that all regions do their best, right? Having said that, my bet would be the Nordics and the Benelux/Central Europe with Germany piece would be the first ones in a similar graph to the one that Dale showed. But I do think that California should be up there.
This guy.
Right?
Andreas, what say you?
Yeah, well, it's boring. Volvo and Scania, I think we share the same. I don't know. No, strike that. We're not working together on research at all.
We should on the green platform.
Yes, we should. That's a good point. Now we're seeing the same thing. The Nordics will be well on the way already in the coming years and hit above 50% in new sales safely around 2030. And then there will be other European markets. I'm not as sure as you on Germany, but let's see on that. California, definitely. And then I hope that there will be some positive surprises also in Asia.
Wonderful. I do appreciate that these regulated parties are giving California a shout out. Well done, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Ho?
I want to say California first because
That's
being,
right.
no. Let me finish. Being in California myself, so I want to say that. However, California has been lacking. I mean, California back in the 70s and 80s, really leading in EPA and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but it's been slipping over the years. I'm not going to go into the reason why. I don't want to turn it into a political platform. But I think California will be coming. I think Northern Europe will be first. And I agree with Joaquin, the Benelux area, less Deutschland, because Deutschland is sometimes a little bit conservative with regard to the legacy brands. My time's up. But I think Nordic, Benelux, California.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you've been good sports. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Well, I want to thank you all for coming to what has been an amazing day. We had a call to action on zero emission infrastructure, which has been signed by at least 40 private and public partners. We have heard from several panelists from both the private and public sector, really echoing this commitment to zero emission infrastructure, and just so looking forward to what the future holds and working together with all of you. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to Transport Scotland. Enjoy COP.